Welcome, everyone, to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, and today we are continuing our journey on uniqueness. So, the last couple of weeks, we've really dived in with a few different people on, how to just continue to be more of you and bring your uniqueness to the table. And today we're going to dive in on personal branding, which I love. So, I have a guest here today who's an expert on that. He's Michael R. Hunter. He's an entrepreneur, a business strategist, and a founder of two industry leading companies. So we have that in common as well. Multi business owners. He's got personalbrand.com, which is the go-to brand agency for thought leaders, authors, and influencers, and Spiffy Checkouts, which is the number one checkout platform for established creators, speakers, influencers, and personal brands. So Michael's mission is to help established entrepreneurs build scalable businesses that create real impact, wealth, and freedom. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here on the podcast with me. I can't wait to dive in with you. Can you tell us more, like why you do what you do? What got you here?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to jump into so many awesome, amazing nuances to this topic of personal branding that is really hot right now. It's a trend, but it's something that I've been in this space since 2010, and how I got started in it was actually I had my first taste of entrepreneurship when I was 17 years old, doing direct sales, and I went out there and I started hustling and making some sales, and I got qualified to go to my first sales conference. That was for like the sales leaders, and that's where I got introduced to public speakers, motivational speakers, personal development, and somewhere along the line got introduced to Tony Robbins, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, and I heard that public speaking was the highest paid profession, and I also heard that most people would rather be 6 feet under than public speak. And I'm like, oh, okay, like this is something where I can make a lot of money, I can have a big impact, and most people aren't willing to do it. And so I just had this level of awareness of that's what I wanted to do. And whether it took me 5 months or 5 years or 50 years, I was going to crack that code and figure it out. But I was 17 and I was or 18, so somewhere in that time frame when I really had these deeper realizations. And who's going to listen to an 18-year-old kid talk about, life or sales or business or any of this type of stuff? And so I had this level of awareness of like, okay, I want to do this someday, and I'm going to prepare for it, and I'm going to get paid to learn. And so I started serving authors, speakers, coaches, thought leaders, and personal brands with marketing services, which led to our software product, Spiffy Checkouts, which is the number one checkout system for big name thought leaders, people like Amy Porterfield and Jay Shetty and Darren Hardy and Frank Kern and on and on and on. And ultimately, now personalbrand.com. And I bought that domain name back in 2013, seeing that the trend was going that direction. And now here, today, it's you almost can't log on to social media without hearing something about a personal brand. And so it's definitely timely. And that's just a little bit of the genesis about how we got here today.
I I'm just so glad to be having this conversation. I think it's hilarious in a lot of ways. Actually, I had my first forays into entrepreneurship around the same time. And when I was in college, I must have been 19. At that time is when I like built my own flute studio. My degree is in flute performance. Way back, I graduated college in 2006, almost 20 years ago at this point, which is crazy. But I built a big flute studio, and that experience in entrepreneurship and building something and maintaining relationships and all of that really was the genesis for me of knowing that I could do what I do now as well.
That's
And
so awesome.
yeah, so like we have so much in common. I love it. Um, and from the standpoint of, being able to talk about that and bring that into, I mean, my financial planning firm, X Squared, is very unique. It is not a typical financial planning firm. Expansive CEO is not your typical business, um, you know, coaching firm either. And getting to really like be me and learn all the ways that I'm unique and just express myself, um, really truly has made it very easy for people to find and identify with like, oh, you're the person, like you're the person I want because you have this unique way that you do things. But yeah, if I was out there trying to be like every other financial advisor or business coach, like then yeah, why would anyone choose me versus like the people who want me, or like why would I choose anyone else?
Right. Yeah, totally. And I think that's the biggest misconception too, is like we see a lot of people at what I call stage 4 of their personal brand journey, and we try to mimic what they're doing, or they're giving advice from what they're doing at that point versus how they got started.
Mm.
And ultimately, uh, to what you were speaking to, like your competitive advantage is you and being you. And especially when we see the people like the Gary Vaynerchuk's of the world, and the Marie Forleos and the JJ Virgins and all these people that are really established, comparison syndrome starts to kick in, and ultimately the natural inclination is try to copy or mimic, or follow in their footsteps. But a lot of those people, and specifically like my story, I was Brendan Burchard's CMO for 2 full years between 2015 to 2017. And even if you look at what Brendan is doing today, it's not how he got started. He got started with a very niche concept of, and then from there, like grew and expanded into more business strategy and then into personal development. So he didn't start in personal development, but that's pretty much all he does now. And so ultimately, it's really find that differentiating factor. And in the beginning, your differentiating factor is that you're accessible. And so I think that's also a big misconception when it comes to building a personal brand, is people are trying to automate and scale way too fast, not realizing that their competitive advantage in the beginning is is being accessible and really being in the trenches and helping people get results.
Ooh, yeah. So, okay, speak more to that because this concept has been coming up quite a bit lately. Um, it's even come up on the podcast a couple of times, but even just in conversations that I'm having, is that, people try to, like you said, automate from the very beginning and try to like emulate someone who is, at 7 or 8 or 9 figures of revenue per year, like right away, versus going through the growth process of learning who you are, who you support, how you're unique, and like getting to like test that theory. So yeah, how do you think people, or how do you guide people through that process?
Yeah, so and ultimately, it's we've all, those of us that have been in this industry for a while, we've seen those people that kind of like come onto the scenes that don't have as much expertise as we have, but like seemingly gain a ton of traction. They're making more money than us. They have a big followership than us. But if you've been in the game long enough, you've also seen those people come and go, right? Like they have that flash of success, but ultimately they can't hold it. And so what the clients that we work with are people that have true depth of expertise, and they're very mission oriented. They're very impact oriented. Like they're doing this not just because there's an opportunity to make some quick cash, but because it's their deeper soul calling and purpose in life. And that is also a competitive advantage. We believe that there's like 3 different legs. Building a personal brand, it's a 3-legged stool. There's the brand, there's the business, and there's the being, your identity. And so, especially if you're already established, and people come to us and we dial in their brand and level up their online presence to establish more credibility and authority. We dial in their messaging to really appeal to a higher paying client that's willing to pay for the best and pay a premium for the best. But then your business model on the other side of the spectrum is already operating at 110% capacity, and it can't handle more business. Then it doesn't, spending money on brand isn't helping. It's actually hurting. And so we would be doing a disservice if we were just focused on brand and we didn't also focus on business model. But if you get your brand and your business model both dialed in, but then your identity isn't ready for this next level of being seen, this next level of wealth, this next level of responsibility, this next level of abundance, then you're going to feel like you are hesitating, or that you're on a treadmill, or that you just can't quite break through. You're going to essentially self-sabotage in ways that are most likely subconscious. And so our unique positioning in the marketplace is really supporting our clients and people in our community, people that come through our events in those 3 areas. And ultimately, consciousness is rising on the planet, and people aren't people can see through the facade of the people that are out there just for the quick money grab or just the surface level, nice looking Instagram pages that lead to a course, but there's no depth to it. And so while there's probably quick money to be made, easy money also goes quickly as well. And so it's really important just to like run your own race, be really focused on getting your clients quality end results. And just by staying in the game and following that deeper soul calling, mission, and purpose, and using the experiences to make you better, is really the competitive advantage.
Oh, I love that you brought that in to the conversation because who you're being, right, is I would say like probably like the main pillar of the three, right? Like the brand. I love thinking of those three pillars together: brand, business, and being. But yeah, if you are not in integrity with yourself, ready to be seen, ready for that visibility, and in a lot of, there's a lot of facets to that. Then the other two, yeah, it's not gonna work. But I love
Yeah.
the what you said too about that brand. If your brand takes off and your business is like already like up to here, what are you gonna do with that extra inflow that's coming in? So, gosh,
One of my favorite quotes is a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, and it says, "Who you are is speaking so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying." And so that's what this next level of leadership is calling. The 80s and 90s, maybe early 2000s leadership was like, especially personal development or business leadership, it was like kind of abrasive, like boot camp style business seminars and leadership and like really polished presenters with suits and ties. And obviously that's a big departure from where we're at now. But where we're going is much more heart-centered leadership. It's true, authentic leadership. It's expertise. And especially as we move into this AI age, there are going to be a lot of people that make a lot of quick cash and money with like AI clones and like cloning themselves and having AI generate content and have AI generated videos just create a lot of money for themselves. But at the end of the day, like people are going to see through the cracks there. And ultimately, as humans, one of the ways that we are going to know if something's real is we're going to value human, real world, real life connections. And so if you're building a business based off of AI gimmicks, you might make some cash short term, but you will be exposed eventually because people are going to demand that you show up in person. And when you can communicate a message effectively in your AI perfect online world, but you can't communicate your message from stage and you can't answer questions live in front of a real audience, then there's going to be a disconnect and it'll be a house of cards that tumbles down. And so I really feel like we're the last generation of people that are really going to go through the pain, effort, and struggle to cultivate real expertise, to cultivate the skill sets of communicating our messages. And there's a really big opportunity here to continue down this path, and not ignore AI, but also not be distracted by the seemingly by other people seemingly taking advantage of these technologies when that doesn't really feel true and authentic to us. So yeah, there's a big move towards AI and a lot of these AI generated aspects of thought leadership. But I really think that as we move towards this AI world where perfection and automation and logic and data and analytics rule our world, we're going to value three things, and that's human connection, community, and experiences. And so, especially as CEOs and business leaders, if we can think about crafting ways to create connection, community, and experiences in our businesses, we'll have a big competitive advantage.
yeah, yeah. I talked with, I think it was Mike Lagori, recently, a few episodes back. We had really talked deeply about that same thing, that like experiences in person with other humans in community is going to be like at a premium over the next 5, 10, 20 years as AI becomes more and more prevalent, that we need that. Like we need human connection. We thrive in communities when we feel that sense of belonging in a community, and that's going to be the competitive advantage going forward. So with personal, how do you bring that back in with personal branding then? Like what's the like tactical or practical um piece of that for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I could geek out about personal brand stuff for hours and hours and hours. So I'm trying to distill down, what we teach in our 3 day live event into a concise, powerful nuggets for your audience here. I think ultimately, if you ask 10 different people what a personal brand is, you'll get 10 different answers. And there's a lot of people that conflate personal branding with content marketing. Like,
Mm,
hey, I'll teach you how to build a personal brand and here's YouTube, or I'll teach you how to build a personal brand and here's how podcasting, or personal brand and book. And all those are different components of a personal brand, but they're not personal branding. And then also people conflate brand with branding. And one is the process to influence the other, but they're not the same. To put it into a metaphor, it's kind of like fish and fishing. Just because you're fishing doesn't mean that you are going to catch a fish, but you have to be fishing in order to catch a fish. And so when it comes to brand, we believe and we know that your brand isn't what you say about yourself, it's what other people say about you. And it's the process of branding that can give people concise, powerful, and memorable language with which to talk about you. And so that's really the key, is to make it easy for people who get results from your products and services, who have a great experience, to know how to refer more people to you. So we all know the power of a warm lead, right? It's like usually from a client that got results from your services or your products. They're talking about it. Our friend says, "Hey, like that sounds great. I want that too." And they make a connection. So that person is coming to you already knowing who you are, what you do, and that you got a result for someone. And when you do brand correctly, every lead feels like a warm lead. And so one of the differentiating factors of how we talk about brand isn't just this surface level concept that is just your website or your color scheme or your headshots or your logo or the surface level visual aspect of it. That is components of it, but your brand is actually a deep strategic imperative throughout your entire business. And to summarize it, like, your brand should do three things. It should be something that inspires you as the CEO, as the founder of your business, to go out there and pursue your mission at all costs. Your brand should be something that inspires you to bust through those obstacles and bust through the challenges and all the issues that come up as business owners. It should inspire your team. Like, your team should be able to, you should hire your team to your brand vision, mission, and purpose, so that you're not having to feel like you're in adult daycare and you're not having to like drag your team with you. Your team should be strategic multipliers of your business. And how do you do that? It's by cultivating a really powerful vision and hiring to that vision. And then your brand should also inspire your customers, and it should attract really high quality customers. And so ultimately, what I believe is that every business problem is a revenue problem. Because if you had the revenue, you could hire the consultant, you could hire the team member, you could hire buy the software to solve whatever problem it is. Every revenue problem is a brand problem.
mm,
Because if you were calling in the right customers, then you'd have the revenue and you could solve the problem. So therefore, every single problem in your business is actually a brand problem. And when we understand brand is not just the costume on the outside of your business, but something that actually lives throughout your business, that's where a massive unlock happens to really shift and create a strategic multiplier to drive growth, not just being some airy, fluffy concept of a costume around your business.
ooh, that really like I have such a tangible experience with that for myself with, you know, when I started X squared, I knew I wasn't just like everybody else in the financial planning space, but I was having such a hard time like distilling what the difference was, right? Like, why, how is it different? I can talk about it, but it's not like, you know, people aren't getting it until they have the experience with me. And then, so for that, to the previous point of like, you have to do the thing and like get the experience and to be able to talk about how you're different, right? So I was working on having those experiences. But 2 years ago, yeah, it was like mid 2023, I finally had like the aha moment of like, it's human design and financial planning, bringing those together. And why is this my personal brand? Because it's what I was already doing. I just wasn't talking about it. I wasn't like putting it out there really clearly. And in, July, August of 2023, when I really launched that in a more clear way, it's like on my websites now, right? It's like very clear. If you go to my website, you can see how I work and how it's different. Um, and I talk about it all the time, right? Too. It's like it's in everything that I do. And from that point on, the clients that come in know exactly why they're coming. And they refer me because, my clients refer me to other people because they're like, oh, well, yeah, you need Hannah. Like either it's the human design aspect or the financial planning or both of them together. But people know the difference and they self select and come into, my ecosystem so easily. It's been like the easiest client acquisition I can imagine over the last 2 years, where before it was hard and heavy and scary sometimes, right? Like yeah, it's such a stark difference when you can speak so clearly about what you do and how you're different, but then your client and the people on the other side can also reflect back exactly that. Oh, you're like, yes,
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, like it's very difficult to be able to talk about who you are and what you do in a powerful way. Like we're all too close to our own stuff. And I would imagine there's quite a long journey to get to where you're at to have that realization. Like
Yes.
you're like so much of finance and money is psychology and emotion. And so just from my own experience with, the finance world, um, there's not a lot of people bringing the human aspect into the financial picture. And that's, I would say, not to diminish it in any way, shape, or form, but to summarize it, it sounds like that's what you're doing is you're bringing the human design, like their unique human blueprint into creating a game plan that works for them. And that's massively different from the Wall Street bros that are just there to crunch numbers and, shove IPOs down your throat or
Right.
whatever it is, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
example. Yeah, and it's um that that concept of the brand being what other people say about you. I mean, I talk about that a lot when we're, talking. It's one of the other things that I work with is gene keys as well. And like one of the spheres is your brand, right? And your brand is what you brandish out into the world, what other people see of you and experience of you. Um, and so yeah, it's such an important part of expression. So then when you work the events that you do, or how do you bring that into the room, and how do you help people um actually start to like implement these things? Because you made such a good point of, branding and personal branding is not content marketing necessarily, right? We're not saying that you need to go make 15 TikTok reels a day. Um, but what do you do? Like how are people supposed to implement this?
Yeah. So branding is the foundation that really just makes all the other efforts more effective. And usually people are there's a right time for brand. If you do it too early, which is when most people's experience is like going to a brand workshop. Like you don't really know what your service is yet. You haven't dialed that in. You don't really know who a good client or a bad client is. You haven't had the experience to recognize or differentiate or to have a qualification process to really know who a good client versus a bad client is. You don't know who a good hire or a bad hire is. You haven't grown enough to make your first hire. And so when you do brand too early, it is surface level. It is fluffy because you have to create these generic, general words that kind of cast a wide net. And so I call it the Goldilocks zone. And it's usually when you're in that like mid to high six figures, low seven figures, where you've gotten there by creating a lot of different offers. And at this point, it's not about creating more. You can't do twice as much. You can't create twice as many offers. You can't do twice as many launches. You can't join twice as many masterminds. You can't spend twice as much money on ads. And so there's this process of simplification to then to then be able to create that exponential growth. And so to answer your question, how we approach creating this foundation is we have a brand extraction process. And what makes us unique and different in the marketplace is we have especially with personal brands, but with any type of brand, we have a deep knowledge and understanding that you're going through a transformational process. And there's a lot of people that can just design a website that looks cool, or a brand that looks flashy, or is your favorite color, or takes a really cool photo shoot but is just this surface level facade out there to the world. But our approach, I tell this, use the analogy or tell the story of Michelangelo carving the statue of David. After he carved the statue that still stands to this day, people were, fawning over Michelangelo, saying, "Oh my gosh, this is so amazing! You're amazing! You're incredible!" And he was just, "No, like I just stripped away everything that wasn't supposed to be there." And that's what our process is. It's not about you being something that you're not, but through our process and asking very strategic questions, we can start to paint a picture of who you actually are, and we can brand that. So it's not about branding you and what you're doing now is that, hypothetically, like someone might be like the TikTok expert. Well, TikTok's not going to be the thing 5 years from now, most likely. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but like, you don't want to brand your trends. You want to brand the deeper why behind what you do that will really transcend the tactics of today. And so ultimately, that's a little bit about our process and how we get repeatable and predictable world-class results for our clients is just really diving down to the core of who they are, setting that solid foundation so that they can build high, long, and far with a simplified message that's geared towards cultivating and bringing in higher paying clients.
Yeah, the piece that I'm curious about now is like, okay, so when when you do that deep dive, I love that example too of like stripping away everything that's not, right? So you've got this gorgeous chunk of marble and we're just going to take away everything that's not the David, right? Like, I think it's such a powerful example for so many different things. But when it comes to authenticity and being yourself, what then do you recommend, or how do you help people show up? Because I mean, I have definitely some thoughts and things that I recommend for people, but I would love to hear your thoughts on, you're not necessarily saying you have to be a content marketer, but what is it like? How do you help people identify their way of showing up in the world?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. And ultimately, being in this game, it takes sticking power. It takes like stick factor. And anyone can override their natural inclinations for a short period of time. Some of us can do it for a week, some of us can do it for a month, a year, 5 years. But at some point, if you are playing against your natural inclination, you're going to burn out. And so if creating content to speak directly to the end of your question there, if creating content is the bane of your existence and it's like pulling teeth and it doesn't light you up and it's a drag on you emotionally and energetically, then that's not the path for you to build your brand. And there's a big misconception that you have to have a huge audience and you have to be posting, you need to have all these followers in order to have a brand, but nothing could be further from the truth. So it's not about, especially with social media, the emphasis is on like posting something that goes viral. But when you post something that goes viral, it just means it's entertaining to the masses. And so, especially for a lot of us that have a lot of knowledge and expertise and depth of perspective and experience and can really help move the needle for clients, we're posting stuff that really isn't going to appeal to the masses. It's not appealing to that lower level of frequency of just entertainment on social media. So we just have to meter our expectations a little bit. And there's just other ways to get in front of your audience. Uh, there's ways, on podcasts, live events, speaking, networking events, masterminds, and ultimately it's about quality, not quantity. And we actually built Spiffy, our software company, this way. Um, we're kind of the best kept secret in the market, but people graduate from tools like Samcart and Thrivecart and ClickFunnels to use Spiffy. And so there's just kind of this natural process where people are searching for the problem that we solve. And so we've grown Spiffy into an 8-figure valuation, bootstrapped it, no investors, off of a YouTube channel. YouTube channel
Wow.
has less than 100 subscribers. It has less than 100 videos, and most of our videos get less than 500 views, but they're the right views. They're people that are looking for a problem that we're able and willing to solve. And when they find us, a certain percentage of them buy. And so it's not about going viral. It's not about building this huge audience. It's about really getting really clear on how you serve, dialing that into a very specific predictable and repeatable result process that you can implement over and over and over again. Where again, you're not overextending yourself, you're not sacrificing yourself for the sake of getting a client's results, but you're able to do it in a scalable way and you're calling in the right people. Most of us, we don't need thousands and thousands and thousands of clients. We just need a couple dozen high paying clients that we can focus on and drive results for. And so it's just really taking the expectations of society and what we see as and what we misinterpret as success and just like getting really real about, okay, how can I go out there? How can I serve? How can I call in my ideal clients and creating a brand, messaging, and business model that accomplishes that.
Oh, yeah, that's I'm I'm so glad that you brought that in because if you are, like you said, doing things, if you feel like you have to be on video and you absolutely hate being on video and it makes you sweat and it makes you nervous and you can't do like, then don't do that. But you love to write, say, and you're like, oh, I could write all day long. And I love that. And I love sharing, articles and blog posts. Like, okay, do that, right? Like show up in the way that you can be consistent with. And I love the emphasis that you've put on um, the long game, showing up, staying, the stick to itiveness. Um, and it really does make a big, big, big difference. Like that's what matters with an audience is that you can continue to show up in a way that's authentic to you. Um,
Yeah.
it,
And I think authenticity is a really interesting thing to dive into and double click on a little bit too. Is I think there's a misconception of like what authenticity is. It's kind of become a buzzword, it's superficial, and I think probably a lot of individuals that are running their business. You've been to conferences for years and years and years, and people throw around the word authenticity, and we all just like do like the deep eye roll when we hear that word, right? But I think a lot of the time people use authenticity as an excuse to be able to like really verbally vomit like their process or like in the name of authenticity or vulnerability, like just spew out all of their emotions of what's going on in their life. And there might be a time and place for that, but usually that like works against your brand. But
Mhm.
authenticity is really about finding the thread throughout your story and creating a brand and message and products and service and offering that are in alignment with who you are and how you want to show up and how you want to serve. And we have a client story that fits this perfectly. Um, Her name's Eliza Van Court. She was a best-selling author, and she was in the women's empowerment space. She has a best-selling book called The Women's Guide to Claiming Space, and she would get men that came up after her keynotes or whoever read her book and say, "Hey, like your message isn't just for women. I got so much value out of this. You can help a much wider audience with your message." Her strategist was convincing her or guiding her to move to a strategic communication angle with her personal brand, and we get the call. And so she was confused on like, okay, I got all this traction with women's empowerment. I see that my next step is strategic communication, but I don't know how to do that without sabotaging what I have going on. Through our process, we discovered that she's had an acting school for 20 years in New York, and she had a whole bunch of actors come through her program, through her school, to become successful actors on Broadway and elsewhere. But she was like, "Oh yeah, that's just like my side hustle. That's my passion. Like that's the thing I love. But like it doesn't like that diminishes my corporate career and all this stuff I'm doing, speaking at all these big universities." And we're like, "Hold on, wait a minute. No, like that's where the magic is." When she talked about, she was lighting up. And so what we did, we found the through line between women's empowerment, strategic communication, and acting, which was her true passion. And that word was confidence. And we came up with the brand positioning statement, act with confidence. And now she can take the exercises that she does in her acting school directly to the boardroom as credibility, not something that she has to hide. And now she can show up fully expressed, authentic with sharing who she actually is and her deepest passion. And that's really what authenticity is. It's not verbally processing or being so vulnerable, sharing all of your open wounds as you're trying to heal them, but it's like just really taking aspects of who you are and being able to find a way to present them so you don't have to feel like you're hiding part of who you are.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. That was such a good example. And like goes right alongside with my human design example from before too. Like I was scared. I was scared to share that. I was very nervous to like I held on to it for almost 2 years. Like not sharing it publicly, not yeah, just like like people can't know this because they'll think I'm crazy and weird. And um yet it was the thing that I was so excited about, so passionate about, and bringing those pieces together. It's so interesting to meet, like to hear your client story and be like, yeah, that's so obvious to me too. I'm like, oh, if that's what lights you up, that's what your passion is. Like it's there for a reason. How do we bring all of this together? But then for me, right, being in those shoes myself, it does feel really vulnerable. It does feel really like ooh, like I'm opening up a part of my heart is the vulnerable piece. And like
Yeah.
sharing something that's very like deeply impactful and important to me. And it's also, again, like super aligned when you find the through line. So yeah, yeah, I'm so glad you brought that in.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I mentioned before too, like oftentimes we're just too close to our own stuff to be able to have enough perspective to see the forest from the trees from the forest. And uh and that's where we shine. Is just like we find a way to bring things together that seemingly there's no possible way for these things to fit, and we find a way for them to fit and for them to align. And ultimately, there's a lot of hesitation, and it's common around showing up fully expressed and being seen. Because all of a sudden, if a client says no, or maybe we lose a client because they didn't want the human design aspect of the financial services, and it freaks them out, then all of a sudden that's like a deeper sense of rejection. And ultimately, like it's just about really deeply understanding that the people that you're meant to serve are going to show up because you are fully expressed. And the people that it repels are probably people that are going to cause a lot more chaos and harm and frustration. And so by staking that claim in the ground, and moving forward fully expressed, it can only benefit you because you're showing up more vibrant. You're calling in more ideal clients, and you're actually repelling people that aren't a good fit for your services.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's usually that, I mean, this is what I find for my clients too. If we're, talking about, what's the next pivot, what's the next thing, or this feeling of wanting to bring something more to the front, be more visible, with something that again feels it feels a little scary. I have another client who has kind of like two, she thinks they're two lines of business and has been like presenting them that way. Um, One is helping coach and guide lawyers, and the other one is clairvoyance coaching, like business. She is a channel, and receives a lot of really powerful information. But what's really interesting is that in her coaching and lawyers, and containers, they have been asking her for more of her intuition, literally like asking her and like wanting more of that. And, when we look at that together, I'm like, they're not separate. They're not separate. They literally go together. Your current clients are asking you for that. And so it feels here's what I'll say from again, also from my experience and then from working with clients, it feels safer to keep them separate. Like there is a place of like, oh no, I can compartmentalize these and it feels safer to keep that one over there and this one over here. But then you're like, you're missing um the exponential effect that those two pieces of you will have on each other.
Totally. Totally. I run into this a lot too. And um, usually there's some aspect of us that is the thing that we're passionate about, but it's the thing that makes the money. And there's something else that we're more deeply passionate about. And sometimes this is within our products and services, just serving two different markets. So I was actually sitting down with a coach recently, like really successful coach, and she has like she's torn between coaching co-founders, specifically people in startups that have co-founder relationships and all the unique dynamics there. But she also loves coaching relationships. But the co-founders are the ones that have the money to pay her higher ticket fees. And the relationships, there's just a cap to what people are willing to pay for relationship coaching. And so instead of there being two separate things that she's dancing and balancing between and feeling like she's dividing her energy two different ways and a lot of excess thought processes of like, well, shoot, like I have two different price points. And what if my founders see my landing page over here with this price point, like all this confliction? It's like letting, like really focusing the front end of your brand on co-founders, but then offering the relationship retreats to your co-founders. So you still get to have that unified message on their front end. You still get to do your deeper passion working with people, helping them heal their relationships, but you're just doing it in a way where you're serving your ideal clients and it's the next step. And so, the example that you gave too, that would be my, obviously I have very limited data points, but that would be like the advice for someone like that, where you're balancing two different things. It's like focus on the one thing and you're starting and help them build the trust and the credibility so that then you can have a weekend retreat for the lawyers that you come in. It's more of a clairvoyant, spiritual intuition retreat where you get to tap on both of those passions, but you're doing it in a little bit more alignment to where it's actually a multiplying effect, not feeling like you're spread too thin.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's like, um, five, you've got five and five, you got five over here and five over there. And you think, oh, I'm adding them together. So I'm doing great. So I've got 10, Mm-mm, right? Like get rid of the division and 5 times 5 is 25, right? So we can really use that exponential analogy, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's so much easier. It's so much easier
Yeah.
to just be
And
yourself.
this is a piece where especially multi-passionate individuals, people that are CEOs, we're passionate about a lot of things. We don't want to be locked in a box. We don't want to be locked in a day job. We don't want to be told what to do. We want to do what we want to do and help the people we want to help. And we have this bigger calling and mission to do a lot of things. And ultimately, um, what tends to happen is we can hustle and we can create our way to seven figures, but you can't hustle and create your way to multi seven figures or eight figures. And so it really does come back to understanding the power of brand and understanding how you're actually fragmenting your brand by doing too many different things, because no one knows exactly how to refer to you. In the instance of the coach that's a relationship coach and the entrepreneurship coach, your relationship clients know that you're a founder's coach and your founder's coach know that you're also a relationship coach. And so they don't quite know exactly where you fit. And you're not, they're always referring people to you that are 2 degrees off of what you actually are. And after you get a couple layers of referral out into the marketplace, your brand is so fragmented from what you actually want to be seen as, just from the game of telephone that's being played. So it's so critically important to get very, very clear on who you serve. And especially if you're a multi-passionate individual, there's lots of ways that you can help people really create a powerful message that allows people clear language to come into your ecosystem and then discover everything, all the different ways that you can help once they're already in your ecosystem.
Mm, I love it. I love it. So, Michael, how can people find you? One of them is super easy. It's personalbrand.com, right? But where else do you hang out? Where do you cultivate your personal brand? Yeah, if people are listening to this and like, yeah, that's what I need for my next step.
Yeah, follow me on social media. Search Michael R. Hunter at Michael R. Hunter across all channels, LinkedIn, Instagram. and X are the platforms that I'm most accessible on. And then also our workshops. We host 3 to 4 personal brand workshops that are really geared towards diving deeper. Call it brand and business breakthrough. So personalbrand.com forward slash breakthrough. Again, that's personalbrand.com / breakthrough is a great next step to just get a little bit deeper understanding of who we are, what we do, how we can help. And yeah, my deepest passion is sparking and inspiring and cultivating entrepreneurship and lifting up people that have positive voices and positive missions in the world. And I just happen to do that through personalbrand.com and through Spiffy checkouts, our software. But that is my deeper passion and how those two things come together for me.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your process and yeah, just having this conversation. I think it was so it's good for me too to get to reflect, right? And see like, oh yeah, it's so important to do this work and then to see how it multiplies and builds on itself and just keeps having those ripples of impact go further and further when we do. So thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great combo.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.